Jesus is the whole body. In the Old Testament, Genesis 2 and 3, two trees are said to be in the middle of the garden of original paradise. These are the tree of life and the tree of knowledge of good and evil. In the garden, man was originally a unity, a single body. Then he was made into a pair, and the pair came into conflict. The male and the female came under the spell of the possibility for knowledge represented by the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. The female yielded to the viewpoint of the serpent in the garden, that the taboo given by God against eating the fruit of this tree was simply God's attempt to keep man from becoming transformed into a divine being. The male accepted the viewpoint of the serpent via the female, and thus man, both male and female, was eventually separated from his original archetypal paradise by God. The male, the female, and the serpent were all punished for aspiration. The viewpoint of the serpent appears to have been correct in a certain sense. Whatever the reason to be ascribed to God's viewpoint, God, in the Old Testament tales, is shown to be opposed to the acquisition of man of the powers that are in the middle of the Garden of Paradise. At the end of chapter 3, the tree of life is also related to a divine taboo. If man were to eat of the fruit of the tree of life, he would not only possess knowledge of good and evil, but he would also become immortal. To prevent his immortalization, man, the male and female pair, is separated from the garden of God, and an angelic guard is set at the gate to prevent man from gaining access to the tree of life. Thus, mankind, is said to have been bound to the elemental world by God, to struggle and die, possessed of a more moral and intellectual sense, but subject to mortality and gross limitations. He is superior only to the animals, who are only instinctive, elemental creatures, by virtue of the faculty of knowledge and the moral sense, the self-conscious or egoic heart, which is responsible for choices in all relations. This account of original or archetypal existence and the fall into elemental or mortal bondage is, when coupled with the attainment or realization of eternal life or immortality by Jesus, the primary message of the Bible. It is an occult or archetypal message related to the potential in every human individual. The original paradise is the whole body of man. The male and female are the two alternating currents of the body, Pingala and Ida, the active expansive and the passive subjective. The serpent is the mind in the autonomic nervous system. The two trees are the two patterns of the autonomic nervous system, one rooted in the lower coil and the vital center, the tree of life, and the other rooted in the upper coil and the subtle and mental center of the brain, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. God is the whole body at infinity, but the viewpoint in the text is not that of God, but of mortal man. To account for the elemental suffering of mankind, the text claims that God is in principle opposed to man's being more than a noble and dependent creature, and that our unrelieved struggling and mortality is a punishment for our innate desire to expand into a spiritual state of freedom and ability, wherein mortality and unconsciousness are obviated. This Old Testament view, which is not true to the esoteric Hebrew tradition as a whole, is specifically opposed and disproven by the moral, occult, and spiritual demonstration of Jesus. Jesus, as he is shown in the New Testament, taught and demonstrated that the conventional mortality view, whether religious or materialistic, is utterly false. Jesus is the mind in Sushumna, Sushumna, or the central nervous system. God is not opposed to our occult and spiritual development, nor to our transformation from a mortal to an immortal and glorified condition. Indeed, God is that condition, and to love God is to commune with and be transformed into that condition. God is the archetype in which we are bodily involved. God is the whole body disposed to infinity. If there is any opposition to our ultimate transformation, we provide it ourselves. The way of and to God is a matter to be realized in truth. The body must be viewed as a whole, not as a pair projected on the mortal elemental plane. The two trees are in the midst of the garden of the whole body. Both are coincident with the spinal line or the structural core of the flesh body and the extended nervous system. The current that is pervading the whole body and its structures is the ancient key to human transformation, and we may indeed seek to attain the divine condition by our knowledge and progressive enlivening or immortalization. But if we do so, we will remain forever in exile in the mysteries of mortal and subtle egoic striving. The way in truth or in God is to act as the whole or single body, in which case both the elemental form and the nervous system or etheric form are made a conscious and simultaneous sacrifice in the condition that precedes both birth and the mortal, subjective and egoic dilemma. There is a sense in which the taboos relative to human duplication of the powers of the two trees are also positive laws relative to human transformation itself. The taboos are the factual present absence of knowledge and immortality. This absence creates self-conscious attention relative to the two trees, or the potentials of growth. It is by encounter with the taboos, that is, by the obligation to responsibly choose to take up the way of sacrifice, that transforming work actually can take place. God is not opposed to this. God is man, except that man, previous to transformation, is only latently divine. Once the choice is made to be a sacrifice and transformation actually occurs, man is realized to be divine, and then he is translated into the divine domain. Therefore, we must overcome fear, sorrow, guilt, and anger, and we must yield into our destiny in truth. The way of truth is to love God without qualification. It is not to love the two trees, to seek knowledge and immortality. Such is not the way. The nervous system, patterned as the two trees, is not to be made into an idol. Rather, God, the infinite reality, is to be the presumption of ignorance. The whole body, elemental, etheric, mental, intuitive, and egoic, is to be made a single sacrifice into the real and prior condition. The way is the way of divine ignorance, which is radiant as infinity. Then we are translated into the perfect domain, which is not the original creature paradise of the human body, but the prior and perfect divine domain, the purely spiritual condition that is utterly free of the manifest and changing dimensions of experience and strife, wherein there is only seeking for knowledge and survival. In whole body enlightenment, the sacrifice is made. Divine translation is uncaused translation into the perfect domain, prior to the gross, the elemental and the etheric, the subtle, the mental and the intuitive, and the causal, the egoic, and the differentiating or creature seeds of manifest appearance. Da.